Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ginnie-graham Show. And I'm with Tulsa Mayor Monroe Nichols. Thank you for joining me this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm wearing my Tulsa Drillers pullover. I'm throwing out the first pitch this evening, so I'm ready to go. Oh, I think I'm ready to go. I'm actually getting a little anxiety about.
That's tough. I mean, I mean, that's a long way to home plate. You think you got it
Well,
in you?
of course, I don't know if you know this about me. Amongst my many talents, I was a Little League All-Star back in the early '90s. So,
I did not know that. I was gonna say maybe your son can help you out here. Maybe be like, you know what?
well,
Tap him in.
I thought about dressing him up and be like, "Hey, man, just go out there, tell him you're me. It'll be great."
Well, I'm going to jump into something that's on my mind. It's a little more serious than Little League and baseball, although that does sound fun. Um, so Trump is taking over cities, and it's the national news, but it's also sort of been on my mind as it relates to Tulsa. And I have been hearing from a lot of Democrats around the city who are somewhat convinced that Tulsa is going to be on the list, that at some point, the federal government is going to come into Tulsa for whatever reason and start putting troops here. And certainly some of the rhetoric that is coming out of the local Republican Party, the governor, seems to be planting the seed for this. And not sure if you noticed, but the president does seem to pick on cities with Democrat leaders who are Black men. So that all plays in there. But I'm just going to throw it out to you. What do you think is the likelihood that Tulsa would end up on the radar of such federal overreach?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I know it's something that a lot of people are concerned about. I don't think that it's likely at all. I feel like the job that we're doing here and partnering with so many different people across kind of the political spectrum has put us in a good position. I feel strongly, frankly, about the relationships that we've built with our federal delegation to this point. And so like I don't necessarily think that it's a huge we're at risk of that. I will say I think it's troubling, and I think everybody, if you're watching this, you got to really take a step back and say like, hey, are we comfortable if the White House switched hands with a Democrat doing that to places that maybe people wouldn't want it? The reality is though, we do have some big problems in this country. We need to be really thoughtful about how we solve them. I really hope we all get to a place where all levels of government are working together. And so the biggest and most concerning thing to me at this point is the fact that we don't seem to have that in ways in which I wish we did. Right now, we're dealing with homelessness. We're dealing with a housing shortage. We're dealing with challenges around student outcomes and economic development and public safety. And the fact that levels of government are going in the opposite direction on how we solve them, I think is incredibly concerning. So, like, there's the outrage part of it, which I totally understand and
Yeah.
maybe feel a little bit about that myself. But also, we got really big problems that we're choosing to not solve them together. And I think that's going to have the longest lasting impact out of all of this, most concerning to me.
So along those lines, the governor has certainly ratcheted up the rhetoric against Tulsa around crime. He's upset over the indigenous compacts that were made. And I think there's some misinformation going on around what those agreements are, what crime is actually like in Tulsa. So I wanted to kind of start with and I have to say, I tried to look at crime stats on the Real Time Information Center and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So again, that
Yep.
might be my IT, but can you kind of give us a look at what are the crime trends right now in the city?
Yeah. So I think the best way, and I can make sure you get this, the kind of major cities just released their report, major city police chiefs, that takes all the larger cities in the country and compares them half year to half year. So 2024, January 1 to June 30, 2025, January to June 30, just to see where you are from a trend standpoint year over year. And what that showed is that we're down in every major category. Homicides are down 20%, and in every major category thereafter. How we think about that is we believe that it's progress, but like, one is too many. So like we're still focused on it. So when we talk about crime stats being down or going in the right direction, it's not that we are, thrilled about it and popping bottles, but it does show that the things that we are doing to enhance public safety seem to be working a great deal. So I think that's one thing to sort of look at. I think the issue that the governor's had, and I actually talked to him since my press conference last week, is one where I think the politics of how you view these issues as governor and the real life practicality of how you have to deal with them as mayor are two very different things, right? Certainly the issue of sovereignty, some people might think it's a political deal. I don't necessarily think it's political. I think it's a values deal. But when it just comes to the politics of intergovernmental agreements, ours is a little bit different. We're settling a lawsuit. We're settling a lawsuit in a way that we believe very much promotes public safety. The governor disagrees. I think some of that foundations is in the compacts, which is very different than what we're talking about. And so I think the governor maybe is having more of a political conversation. We're having a public safety. How do you begin to work through the challenges, the technical and otherwise, that are very real when you're the largest city in the country that's all Indian reservation. I think our thought is you got to lean into partnerships, and that's what our settlement is all about. And so I think that's kind of the thing with that deal. One of us hardcore political conversation, the other of us a very practical, operational. How do we keep city safe? How do we continue to develop our economy conversation? I think our track is a lot better, frankly, and I'm excited about it.
So there's a thought out there that the tribes aren't really prosecuting these cases.
Mhm.
So how much truth is there? And are tribes prosecuting cases? And what kind of cases are they prosecuting? I mean,
Yeah,
what level
yeah.
of crime are we talking about here?
Yeah, so all major crimes, the hardcore felonies that you think about all the time, the rape, the murder, the shooting, all that kind of stuff, that already goes as it relates to native defendants. That already ladders up to the U.S. Attorney's Office, right? Like that's where that goes. We're mainly talking about misdemeanor cases. There's some petty crime in there. Most of it's traffic related stuff. There are things like that that typically are the municipal court cases that we might get, the ones that we are now working with the tribal nations to for us to dismiss and for them to prosecute. So I mean, I think that's all that I'm glad you brought that up because it's not all crimes are not the same, and there's a remedy depending on what level of crime you've committed. As far as the how are prosecutions going in Indian country, I think everybody has to understand it is significantly different post McGirt. And so setting up courts to be able to take on the kind of volume that they've had to take on in the last 4 or 5 years is different from what they were doing prior to that. The same thing goes to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They got a ton of cases on like their McGirt docket. And so they were even, not getting to a ton of cases for a long time. Everybody's catching up now. And I think the other part about that is that every case, and nothing but respect for the district attorney, but he doesn't prosecute every case that comes to him either, right? Like, so there are decisions that are made about these things. What is true, though, in our settlement agreement, it actually kicked off an 8-month planning process for us to work through some of those technical challenges. We are concerned about prosecutions, which the same way I'm concerned about prosecutions, by the way, for anybody who comes through municipal court, for example. We are concerned about being able to track how cases are matriculating through the system. We are concerned about finding ways in which officers who have to go testify in court maybe can do it without having to go all the way to Okmulgee for one case, or for example. In fact, the Creek Nation's getting ready to open a traffic court, I think in Jinx. So like, these things are starting to happen. The big things that hit the headlines, which I understand, right? Or, oh my goodness, Tulsa's not going to enforce laws. That is not true. If you get pulled over, no matter who you are, if it's an arrestable offense, you're going to jail. If you get pulled over and you deserve a ticket, no matter who you are, you're going to get a ticket. The question is who's going to prosecute you, depending on the level of the infraction. That's the only question that we're dealing with right now. And again, I think our crime stats show that it's pretty clear that we're doing a decent job of enforcing the law and hopefully preventing quite a bit of it as well.
I want to go back to the conversation you said you had with the governor, and it sounded like you were talking mainly about the relationship with the tribes, but it does seem like there's some areas that the state could be doing more to help out Tulsa. And I've got a couple of ideas myself. I wanted to throw it out to you. When you're looking at what could the state, with the governor's support, do to help Tulsa in general. What are some of the issues you kind of look at that you could use a little helping hand?
Well, I think we should be working together on all issues. And actually, to be honest, the governor and I had a conversation about the settlement. We don't agree a whole lot there, but I think in that conversation helped him understand that the political argument that you're making is actually the very thing that we're trying to prevent every day, right? So like we're trying to get there by different means. And I think what's also important to the governor, I'm not sure he realized this, the settlement does not see jurisdiction. It just says we're not addressing that jurisdictional issue. This is how we're going to operate. I don't think he really knew that. So there's some core things about that. But the other part of our conversation was how might the state help us on the issue of homelessness? How might the state continue to partner with us on mental health funding, which, as you know, is somewhat at risk right now, to make sure that the state's really familiar with the outcomes we're seeing with the mental health resources that we're getting, putting that money in the hands of practitioners. I certainly want to continue to partner with the state on challenges that we have around affordable housing. Right now we have somewhere in the neighborhood, I think we're just under $2 billion in projects that are underway from an economic development standpoint. Continuing to partner with the state on economic development. Like for me, I think all these things are critically important. That's why we can't just have political battles about things that we may or may not understand very well. But the last piece we talked about was public safety. We talked about the OHP being pulled out of Tulsa, and why that's a problem for us, and why law enforcement at all levels has to work together to make sure we can keep people safe. As you may remember, when I was running, I talked about making Tulsa the safest big city in the country, and that's why I say we see crime trends going in the right direction, but we have a long way to go to get there. But one of the areas that you're judged against is vehicular fatalities. And if we don't have OHP working with us as a city, we're never going to be able to get there on that front. And so, once we had a conversation about who we think is wrong about what, we had a conversation about accountability that we all share. He in his role as governor, and my role as mayor, and knowing there are some things that we can get done that aren't insanely political. Whether we get those things done, we'll see. But I was actually pretty encouraged by the conversation we had after we got past the first 30 minutes of things we don't agree on at all.
I was a little thrown by the OHP being pulled out
Yeah.
because that's just not something that local police have training on, are highway accidents or have the equipment. I was kind of schooled by someone about the problems with that. So I hope that there's some
And the governor didn't know
change
that
on
either.
that.
I told him that he was not aware of that.
Oh, well, that would have been good information to have. But
Well, I
what
mean,
going back to I'm sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's the thing, I left that conversation thinking, as where I might disagree with an individual, I really got to do a better job of communicating the impact of things, because you assume that people know these things if they're going to make a decision like that. But all of us are only as good as the information that we get, and I take him at his word that he was unaware of some of those challenges. Which my attitude is that's why you call me, or you know engage Chief Larson or Commissioner Roberts before you make a decision like that. But my hope is we can do a little better job of educating the state. I do understand that us in Oklahoma City have some uniqueness about us that might not be true in other parts of the state. And I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding of what it takes to get the job done here, and why the state can be a great partner, and what it means when the state chooses not to be. That was somewhat eye-opening for the governor, I believe.
So when it comes to homelessness, what are you kind of seeing the state could do on a practical matter? Are there issues with state property overpasses? I mean, are there some issues there? I mean, where are you kind of thinking the
Yeah,
state could help more?
yeah, I think that's some of it, but also to me, I think the overarching deal is we know a significant amount of our of folks who are unhoused do suffer from some sort of mental health challenge, and so us taking any steps back on that would be detrimental to any progress we've made, or detrimental to us making any progress in the future. I'm really interested to see like where might the state own property that could be, good fits for people who need support. How are we thinking about all the different what happens here at the city is we may have some resources, but the uses of them are pretty restrictive. And so it's hard to solve big problems when a lot of the resources you have so many restrictions on them. The state can be a partner with us with money with fewer restrictions that allows us to get the job done in a way that we can be held accountable. So, I think that's a big thing for me. There's obviously, probably a need to help us be a force multiplier on just addressing some of the issues we see with folks who may be unhoused. But the big thing is the state has a ton in the way of resources, either to help us with the people who are unhoused or help us prevent people from becoming unhoused. And I think those are the areas that I hope we can partner on.
The tenants' rights issue is a big one, and you being from the legislature knows that's a tall hill to climb to bring more rights to some of the tenants. But that's maybe a
Yeah.
whole other
Well, I
conversation.
will say, like, we've started to dive into that. We have a eviction mitigation council that's being stood
Mhm.
up because, to your point, we're number, I think, 11 in the country in eviction,
11.
if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And that's too much. And we know the impact it has on kids in schools, we know the impact it has on our community overall. And that eviction mitigation council certainly has people who are kind of in that space, but it also has landlords in it, right? Like we've got to have a different conversation than we've had before because where we are right now is not going to be good enough for us if we're going to continue to move forward. And so that group is going to meet here in the next week or so, I think, to start, and hopefully we can be informative to the state and reasonable changes that we need there, but
Right.
also make sure that if there are things that we have to do here with landlords at the table, there's no preemption laws at the state that prevent us from doing things that are necessary.
So there are two ordinances that the city council are debating that's gotten some attention. One is coming from Councilor Lakin about people in medians, and the other is it's a years long one, it seems like, from Councilor Bellis on expanding civil rights protections. I wanted to get your thoughts on both of those. Um, what do you think about Councilor Lakin's
So
no one in medians?
so I got to tell you, I have started a practice since I've been mayor to not meddle a lot in council discussions. And but what I'll say is the things that I've heard. I take Counselor Lakin at his word about his concerns about a whole host of folks who might be in the medians. Um, it's not particularly safe. I think the council has a going to have a good debate and conversation about the whys and all that kind of stuff. But I've tried to. I didn't always model this when I was in the legislature, but I've tried as mayor to really meet people where they say that they are, and I think the concern is real. I'm looking forward to the conversation around it. But I'm gonna reserve going too far as offering up opinion, so as not to get out ahead of the city councils. They have the discussions they need to have.
Okay, so I'm going to circle around back to my first question about a city takeover as more of a thought exercise as
Yeah,
we end this.
yeah.
If tomorrow President Trump says, "I'm going to put Tulsa in its place," you need to have what for whatever reason. What do you do? Who becomes Tulsa's champions in fighting that kind of federal overreach?
I think it always does start with um, the elected leadership here. I mean, I think, I have a responsibility to the people who voted for me to make sure, I'm always acting in the best interest of all citizens. I don't think the best interest of all citizens is to have a military presence here in the city. And, I think I would be very strong in communicating that. Um, but I think even before we got there, part of my job is also, as I was even talking in our conversation about the governor, is preventing those kind of things from happening. I think that what we have done so far, me to get elected and me as mayor now, has done some things in some relatively non-traditional ways. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people. I mean, the Tulsa world is very helpful. I don't think there's a lot of people who thought that I would win the election. So it took me going across the city, talking about any issue at all times. And I think, if you face that kind of thing, you got to figure out how do you best unite your city in a response, not necessarily call one, two, or three people. I think you have to enlist citizens from all across the city. So I think the way that we're going about doing our business, which is engaging people, will always be the best prevention and will always be the best response to people who would, try to characterize us as something that we're not. Even when criticized by the governor a little while back, you didn't hear other people joining on and saying, "Oh yeah, Tulsa's dangerous and the tribal settlement's horrible." And we don't have that kind of stuff happen here because we're solving problems together. And even at the suggestion that that was true, or that suggestion that we are different than we are, I called the governor and I said, "Hey, I think there's some things that you got that you might be misunderstanding." And I think I do that not for any show of weakness or anything like that, but it's my responsibility to educate the government what's going on. And so if the president of the United States also had some sort of misconception about who we are as a city, my goal would be to get on the phone with the president of the United States and say, "Hey, man, I think you got this all wrong." So I think we're far away from that, which I'm very excited that we're far away from it. And focus on solving the problems that we always said we were going to go out and try to solve. So I hope this is a conversation we never have to have. But if something like that happens, I'm coming here first to talk about it.
Well, I would really want to be hearing in on that conversations just as to listen in between you and the president. But do you feel like that conversation you have with the governor changes the relationship at all or changes the view at all going forward?
I don't know if it changes his view of the settlement. I think it's about us building a relationship that's based on, you now know why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you're going to criticize it, understand, but criticize it from a factual basis. I'm not trying to, we live in a big diverse city and diverse state. Not everybody's going to agree. So I hope that the conversation began to reset our relationship a little bit. When he gave his initial interview, I think on one of the other news stations, I think it's Fox or something like that. I didn't like the way that he talked about the settlement. I didn't like the way he talked about this community. I didn't like the way he talked about me. I didn't let those three things stop me from calling the governor and trying to talk to him about what's good for Tulsa and even about the things that he may disagree with. And so, I don't know if it changed his perception again of the settlement. I think it changed his perception and how you might show a little more respect to the elected leadership in Tulsa in the same way the elected leadership in Tulsa has showed you respect as governor of the state of Oklahoma.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time you spent with me. I always do appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. So I want to give you the last word. What are some things on your mind? What are some things that you want to leave people with?
This is a word for all those parents out there who are in the position that I'm in this year. Parents who are getting ready to see their little baby, their precious, prized possession, go through their senior year and get ready to go off to college. I am told by people who've already been through this, for all you parents out there, that it's going to be okay. Also, if you're out there and you're watching those old videos when they were younger, just know I'm doing the same thing. I'm crying with you. But I am excited about football season. TU has Abilene Christian. We got a battle here in the mayor's office. Mike Miller is an Abilene Christian grad. Everybody who actually knows what they're doing up here is TU grads. So we're going to have a battle on Saturday, and we're going to haze Mike after that. But just a note for everybody going back to school, good luck this school year. Like I said, for parents who did that last first day of school, which was hard for me, just know we have our big virtual support group and thinking about everybody out there.
It's rough. I just dropped my daughter off in Rochester, New York.
Oh
Whew.
man,
I won't see her till December.
oh my, did you let her walk you out or did you just
Oh,
leave?
yeah, it was rough. I'm not gonna lie. But then I got home and she took half of my skincare products and makeup and left me two loads of laundry. So that laundry is gonna stay on that floor till Christmas. I've decided. But it's rough. Enjoy it though. It's fun, and I think maybe we should get you on like a sports podcast. You can talk. You
I
can
mean,
talk football with our
I've told
guys.
everybody to take me. They won't let me on. I don't know what it is. I'm doing everything I possibly can to get on a sports podcast. Nobody wants me to do it. I don't get it.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will talk to you again soon. I thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Yes, ma'am.